Welcome to another Instagram Wednesday question and answer. Our first question is, do you have a dog that hangs out with you more than the others? Is it a male or female? If so. Currently, I don't really hang out with more than the other because I do the group. But if I am hanging out with a dog, it's more like the puppy. And she is a female right now. So she is the one that I hang out with more than anybody else because she's a puppy. Best way to correct my dog if he trying to dominate another male. The best way to correct a dog is to communicate to the dog in the best way that he understands that this behavior is not to be tolerated. So whatever that is for that specific dog, that's what you would use. Now, in order to really give a solution, I'd have to know the details on the dog. You could send me a message. Can you give a brief description of what would be done to teach a dog not to take food that is thrown into the yard or food that has been passed through your gate that has been poisoned? This is complicated and simple at the same time. You're going to have to set up an environment where the dog knows that there's things that he's allowed to do and he's not allowed to do. And that all stems from communication. For me to get into details on how I would train this, it's not for question and answer because this requires basically a whole game plan to be able to teach this properly, and it has to be very consistent. Have you ever been challenged or tried as the alpha from any of your dogs? How would you handle challenging as an alpha, fear versus respect? I have seen a lot of people have their dogs fearful of them in alpha role. Can you elaborate more? Me personally, I haven't really been challenged by any of my dogs. Why? Because they grow up with me. So there's a learning phase, there's a communication phase, and because they're puppies, the challenging really doesn't exist. They learn that I am their dad and they don't really give me any problems. The problems that I'll have with a dog in an alpha position or a truly dominant dog is a dog that comes here for training that has been able to do whatever he wants outside of this environment. Now, when a dog like that comes to my house, I don't just go straight into training. I basically build a routine of communication, try to have fun, try to bond, which might take time depending on the dog, and don't really tell him to do anything. I just need him in a safe environment or her in a safe environment, and I just need time to build a relationship. Once I've established a relationship, then I'll come up with a game plan of how I'm going to train this dog. And if the circumstance was to go sideways, what I would do. I can't really elaborate on what specifics I would do because I'd have to know the dog and what the situation is, what the temperament of the dog is. And then upon that, I'll decide what I would use. But generally, that stuff goes away if you have a good relationship with the dog. Do I want a dog to be fearful of me? No, because that gives problems when you're trying to train the dog to elite levels. I want the dog to respect me, but I don't want the dog to be fearful of me. Hope you're well. Was curious about the average lifespan of the hybrids. I'm not sure. The oldest ones now are around 8. So far, they're running around like puppies. I would assume 12 to 15, hopefully. That's what I would assume. A lot of the dogs in that line are around that age when they passed, but that's what I would assume. I heard puppies go through a teething phase. How do you stop them from chewing on everything? I have 2 toddlers. What's the best dog breed to consider? I wouldn't say there's a specific dog breed to consider. I would say you want to consider a good dog, period, of a breed that matches your lifestyle. They all do go through their nipping puppy stages for the most part. It would be worse with a Malinois than it would be with a pug, So, you got to determine what your lifestyle is and what kind of dog. The nipping is not really a big deal. It's just a little bit of annoyance and knowing how to deal with it. Because depending on what you're trying to build out of the dog, you don't want to kill the confidence by correcting them wrong. They need to really understand why they're getting in trouble for nipping. But it's a pretty easy fix. I got videos on YouTube that show how to do that and also alternatives to those on my course. But generally, that's not something I worry about. That's just a phase that kind of goes away around 6 months. Me, generally, if I'm going to choose a breed for myself, if I had 2 kids and a family type of lifestyle, the dog of my choice for a family would be a pit bull, a female pit bull, but it would be one of my dogs from my bloodline. I wouldn't really go outside of that because I don't know them. I've bred my dogs for years and years, so I would trust them. I would also trust my shepherds and my hybrids. But as a family dog, pit bull, they're very relaxed, they're very loving, they have a lot of pain threshold and tolerance for kids. Whereas a shepherd might be a little protective over the kids and with people. And the hybrids might also be the same. So depending on your lifestyle, a pit bull would be my personal choice, but a pit bull from myself, so one of my dogs. How to stop my American bully to stop going mental when somebody at my door, jumping and barking. This is all based on communication with you and your dog. So you have to let the dog know and communicate to the dog that this behavior that's happening is not something you want. And in order to do that, you have to learn how to communicate with that dog. I can't explain exactly what I would do in this scenario because I need to know the details and I need to teach you how to communicate with that dog. But I would suggest the course because that will teach you everything on how to communicate with the dog. Can you start a bloodline of your own without paperwork? You could do whatever you want without paperwork, but then it's the ability for people to trust you that you know what you're doing. Now, you would have to be able to build credibility for people to trust you. So that would take time. And if you're going to build your own bloodline, that's exactly what you're going to have to do is build credibility. Do papers matter? Yes. But if your credibility is there, I would say papers wouldn't be as important. For me, if I'm going to talk to a guy who's a breeder, I don't care about the papers. I obviously would like the papers so I can see a history of what dogs were behind the pedigree. But if the breeder knows his line and he knows dogs and he's trained dogs, then I would validate that more than somebody who just has dogs with papers. I hope you guys enjoyed the question and answers today. It wasn't a big one. It wasn't a long one. Some of the questions were very valid. The problem with some of these questions are a lot of the issues rely based on communication. And communication is not something I can explain on how to do in 5 minutes on a question and answer. This is something that you guys have to practice, build repetition in the dog, and over a little bit of time, you build a communication schedule. Once you have solid communication with the dog, you can communicate with the dog that, hey, I like this behavior. I don't like this behavior. I want this done. I don't want this done. Okay, try again. Okay, don't try again. This is all solid communication. Whenever people call me and tell me they want to build a protection dog and they want this crazy dog, at the end of the day, a lot of it has to do with your fundamentals. If I was going to teach a fighter how to fight, he has to learn the fundamentals. And top tier fighters, top tier trainers, the skill level is in the fundamentals. How precise are you with the fundamentals? How precise is your communication? So anybody that wants to do crazy training, high level training, you need to learn how to communicate. The guy that's excellent at communication with his dog is going to be at a higher level in training. So to normal people, the simplest things like communication that doesn't really mean that much, you see somebody call their dog 3, 4 times, 5 times, and the dog comes. There's a huge difference between that precision on somebody who calls a dog once and it comes right away, or they tell the dog no and the dog knows exactly what's going on. That's because there's precision in what they're doing. The communication is very clear and the dog understands what's going on. There's not a multitude of commands. There's not a multitude of this and that. And if you're going to be doing something like food refusal from poison on your yard and these things, the communication has to be very, very clear. Even something like the question with barking at the door. For somebody to come to me in person to do a lot of the stuff that's in the blueprint, it's going to cost a lot. So why not just, here's the information, follow this, stay on a schedule to learn this, and then when you have the communication fairly decent, then we can start incorporating protection or bite work or scent indication or whatever things you want to excel the dog at. But the base communication needs to be there. And it needs to be clear. The more precision you have in the communication, the easier it is to train a dog to do anything. I hope you guys enjoy this question and answer, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. And once again, don't be a piece of shit. Have a great day.